Okay. So in this session, we're gonna cover 5 topics: why create a brand, the branding process. We're gonna go through some case studies of what we've done in the past, just to give you some context on each of the areas that we'll be covering as part of the process. And then we'll go through a little bit into the design and the application aspect of that, although that's pretty extensive, so I don't, we'll have to dive into that as you guys ask questions. And then obviously questions at the end. I want to save quite a bit of time for that. Make sure that you go ahead and push those up the slide too. So why create a brand? Branding is, well, does anyone have any sense of what a brand is? Go ahead. Absolutely. Yeah, so the one thing I want to reference here, that's a great perspective. The one thing I do want to reference, though, is that it is not just a logo. And so many folks come to us and they say, okay, I've got my brand, here's my logo, I'm ready to go. That's not what a brand is. A brand is essentially the perspective that people have on you. When they hear your company name, it's everything they think of when that happens. So, it's your products, it's your services, it's kind of the what and the how that you do, and the why, obviously, but more importantly, it's the emotional connection that people have and can resonate with when they hear your company name. So that's really what's going to set you apart as a company. If you can engage them on an emotional level and get them to really resonate with you, that's your goal when you're creating a brand. All right, so if your brand, for all intents and purposes, typically represents the first impression of your business, and obviously if that's done poorly, it will most likely be your last impression. So it's challenging to make sure that you do it right, spend the time on it, and go through these steps that we're going to outline here just to make sure you're doing everything you possibly can to make that right impression. I don't want to go too much into the why. I'm sure, how many of you have read Simon Sinek's Start With Why? Okay, highly recommend that if you haven't. It will help you. It will help guide your process as far as. We good, Jay? All right. So it'll help guide your process when you're thinking through. Apple is a great example. For instance, Apple takes their brand, and they took everything about their products and their service out of it, and they just focus entirely on what it is to essentially think outside the box, challenge the status quo, do everything that has all aspects around your lifestyle rather than, I think they end it with, we just happen to make great computers. Do you want to buy one, basically? So, they don't care. Oh, hold on. Keep talking. All right. So, we've been, Creative Fuse has done, I don't even know how many branding projects over the years, but it's probably been, in the hundreds or maybe thousands. But of all the projects we've done, I'll say one of the most recent ones, and I'm going to touch on it in the case study, was one for Cibertap with the Entrepreneur Center. We got to go through from start to finish and dive into every aspect of what it is to essentially take a concept that exists and totally revitalize it into something completely new, from name up, basically. So I'm going to go through that. It's a lot of fun, and it'll give you a lot of context on what we're going to talk through here. So to touch on what exactly does a brand do for me, it essentially humanizes your product or service offering, which allows people to connect with it, again, on that emotional level if possible, but at least apply it to their lives. It's as far as an effective brand, you should be able to connect people with what your company values or represents, and that really starts with you understanding what you value and what you want your company to present themselves as. You need to invoke trust and stability in that. So if it looks like, if your logo, for instance, has like, it's kind of childlike or isn't capturing exactly what you want it to, that's going to give you problems as far as invoking trust and stability. You also need to humanize your product or service offering. We'll dive into this a little bit later, but this is a really important factor in helping people engage with you. Are we on? All right. So, and the last thing is just clearly identify why you exist. Again, that goes back to Simon Sinek's Start With Why. So if you have not read that, really highly recommend it. There's some links at the end of this that will give you access to connecting various resources throughout this presentation too. One is a link to that book, so I highly recommend that. Quick quote, your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. So that's a good representation of making sure that you're paying attention to how you're representing yourself through all aspects of your business, through all aspects of any content that you're pushing out, any marketing collateral, anything and everything. It all goes down to exactly that perception that people have. It's the whole picture. So with that said, let's jump into the process a little bit. Again, don't hesitate to jot down questions as I go through this, because there's quite a bit of content here. I really want to hammer the early stages specifically in the branding process. So we're going to go through, I'll show you, there's really 4 major areas here. If I can get it to go to there we go. So industry and audience research. We're going to go through brand positioning. We're going to go through brand personas, buyer personas, and then obviously the end part is the design and application of all of that material and data that you dive into. So the industry and audience research, this is really where you're going to do everything possible to understand who you're marketing to, why you're marketing to them, what it is you want to be represented in their eyes, and just, again, as much data as you can gather on trying to help people understand who you are and why they should either engage with you or work with you or what have you. So a few keys to good research results here. You got to be mindful of time spent. It's really easy to go down a lot of rabbit holes when you're researching. I mean, especially you hit Wikipedia and you're starting in some industry thing and you end up on something about who knows what, and you're kind of like learning about King Henry VIII or something, and you're like, why am I here again? But be mindful of that. You really just want to understand the where you are as far as landscape goes with your current audience and your current market. So as soon as you can get that picture, it's constantly evolving, so you don't need to keep diving in and really having like a fully thorough explanation of everything in your audience right now. Use the tools available. Many are free. There's an abundance of stuff out there. You can do a little digging. It's going to change per industry, but there are even local tools. There's some towards the end of this in the resource links. The Dayton Library, for instance, has a massive database that's fully accessible and free for anyone to go through and do tons of demographic and psychographic and geographic, all kinds of info if you want to go into it, and it's all free. So highly recommend that. Set some goals. This, again, helps you stop from going down those rabbit holes, but it'll give you a sense of like each area that you want to go in. Just set a quick goal on what exactly you're looking to target and find, and keep it simple, basically. And then don't get hasty. It's challenging at this point in time when you're doing all this research. It's very common for people to go through and figure that they have the solution that they're looking for. They have enough data now that they're like, okay, I got exactly what I need here. I know exactly what brand I need to do. I don't need to move any further. I don't really need to go do all these personas and things like that. I'm just going to go ahead and get this created and move on. But don't get hasty. You will appreciate how much further you can go with it and how much more successful it will make you in the long run. So understanding your industry. We use a method called PESTLE, which is political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legal. So we base all of our data research on these elements. You can go through and apply a series of questions along the way, and you can touch through each of these, and you ask the same questions within each category, and it gives you a very broad approach to that data that you're going through. So as a starting point, some questions we might ask, in which environments can I immerse myself so I can observe and document my findings? Where are the people in your industry? What can you do to really engage them and pay attention to exactly what's happening so that you can just sit with that and be in that environment almost from a user experience or a customer experience? What people could I interview, survey in order to gather more specific data? Go talk to them, see what they're saying. Talk about your competitors. Talk about anything and everything you can find to give you more data. Who are the big players in my industry and what are they doing that seems to work or not work? Don't be afraid to dig into your competition a little bit. What's going on? Is it working? What can you do better? This will actually help you identify some gaps as well along the way. And what pain points in the industry are yet to have been addressed or solved? So that, again, there's your gaps, but that's a big one because you may find when you start diving into the industry stuff that you think you might have exactly where you want to target, but as you identify a lot of gaps, it may be much easier to pivot to some either low-hanging fruit or something that's much more presentable and approachable in the moment and may get you some revenue generated much quicker. So understanding your customers and users. So what kind of experiences or offerings are your potential customers accustomed to? These are pretty common areas. We're going to dive into some of this in the buyer persona side, but your goal in this phase is to start documenting some of this information so that you can take all of that and expand upon it as you're creating a persona. So what are some of their specific challenges? What are some of their goals? You can also dig into your competition's audience for insights as well. So if you can't find enough information on just the audience you think you're trying to target, don't be afraid to go and research some of your actual competitors' social channels or any of the media channels, sign up for their emails, do whatever you can to get insights on how they're targeting things. What demographics are they going after, what channels, keywords and buzzwords, pay attention to their messaging that's within all of that content. Again, just try to give yourself as much data as you can work with. It'll really help you move along. So again, we're going to dive into the buyer persona side as soon as we get through this portion. The competition side, the goal here is really to identify the strengths and weaknesses of your competitors, and then you need to apply that to yourself. Make sure that you're not afraid to admit where what you can do and what you can't do. You don't want to go through and pretend like you can do everything for everyone. It's not going to serve anybody, and in the end, it's just going to give you a lot of headaches. So clearly identify what you want to do as a company and how you want to do that and why you're doing it, and then go through and understand where your competition is from a landscape perspective. So questions you can ask, you can make a list of the companies you feel offer something similar, and then what products and services are they offering? Are they the same as yours? Are they different? Is there slight subtleties that make yours better? What's their value proposition or primary message? What's that hook that they're using as part of their messaging? Do they target the same markets, audiences you're looking to target? Are they, is it the same industry exactly? Have they targeted industries that you maybe weren't aware of so that you could dive into those? What features set them apart from you and the other competitors? Again, don't be afraid to say, I can't do what they do, but I can do this a lot better. Just understand that about yourself. And then are there potential gaps you can now identify in your market? I can almost guarantee you will find one or two new gaps as you go through this that you probably didn't know about before you started. So positioning, and we're going to go into brand positioning right after this, but the three factors here, you really need to identify what makes your offering unique. So create a comprehensive list of features and benefits that characterize your product or service, and then hone in on those that most likely set you apart from your competition's value proposition. Again, we kind of hit on that, but identify active and potential keywords. So this is a big portion of messaging nowadays. There's a lot you can do as far as understanding what people are actually searching for. You want to make sure that anything that you're creating from a messaging standpoint actually makes sense and is going to hit the right people. You may talk about your product or service, but if you're saying it in the wrong way and you're not really hitting essentially what Google, for instance, is thinking that people want, You got to hit your audience, and you got to cater to Google as well, and make sure that those align. So then, obviously, the end portion of this is you're going to determine your position in the market. So that's really brand positioning. Now, brand positioning, the goal here is to create a unique impression in the customer's mind so they can associate something specific and desirable with your brand, distinct from the rest of your industry. Sometimes this is really hard, especially if your industry is extremely competitive. Sometimes you may need to get really creative with what this looks like, but a positioning statement in general is not something that you're really going to share outwardly. It's meant for internal purposes, and it's meant more of like a guidance piece that you can use throughout all of your materials. So key elements needed to position your brand. You want to define your core values. So people are not going to value what you do if you don't understand what your own values are. So make sure you do that first. Understand where you are as a company, and even as just human beings. Define your value proposition. The specific value you bring to the target market and no one else is offering, or at least not at the level you are. Validation. So what qualifications do you have to validate your position in the market? We call these unique factors that help further distinguish your business from your competition. Sometimes these can be, they're usually 3 to 5 words that you all resonate with as a company. And what we found is most people, if there's 3, many times a competitor may have 2 of the 3, but usually one of those stands you apart from everyone else. So if you create 3 different factors that make you guys different from anyone else, you should find that can give you a very validating aspect to your approach here. Positioning elements, these are kind of the what. This is what you do and how you do it. So don't be afraid to get creative with these. Don't just say, we make gadgets. Do something fun with it and explain it in a way that's going to be engaging. Again, you're trying to hit them on an emotional level and help them resonate with what you're doing. And then the positioning statement itself, again, is internal purposes only, but it needs to communicate the ideal customer experience as well as how you want to be perceived within the market. So that's the main goal. And we will show some example positioning statements later on so that you can tell exactly how all of this gets applied. This is optional, but if you can set a guarantee, some industries it's almost impossible, but others I think people stand by their guarantees. We have some customers, for instance, there's a construction company that offers a 5-year guarantee, and that's like unheard of in the commercial market. And they stand by it, and it goes a long way when they're talking to large commercial customers. So if you can do that, go for it. I mean, that's a great way to drum up business and help people, again, understand what you value. So next phase here, brand personas. This is where it gets fun. Personas are essentially what allows you to humanize your brand. So you want to give people something valuable and authentic to connect with you on. We use typically celebrities or major figures that everyone kind of recognizes because it allows everyone in your company to just know who that person is. There's tons and tons of videos and content out there that you can go really pay attention to how the personality, and again we'll show you a few, but how they may engage with people, sometimes in a bad way, sometimes in a good way, how they might connect with or answer questions, how they react. So you can get all of this information from anywhere pretty much, which is great. So when you're creating a brand persona, you want to define the personality traits. The goal here is to establish a series of traits and characteristics that the brand will exemplify. So, for example, funny but not goofy, influential but not domineering, inclusive but not naive to those who don't want to participate in ways we want to, enjoy what we do but never forget to highlight other successes, honest but not insulting. You get the hint. Define your brand essence. So this is like the heart and soul of who you are. This is that underlying essence. It's usually 1, 2, maybe 3 words, but it's like the absolute fundamental core level of who you are as a company. Examples: Volvo, safety; Apple, think different. I mean, they're so simple and yet extremely effective. Nike, authentic athletic performance. Again, you get the hint here. Voice and tone. So this is now outwardly, if you're speaking as a brand, what does that sound like? Exactly. Like, get into the specifics here. So some examples, you want to use one-letter words here of what it sounds like: nurturing, inspiring, enthusiastic, playful. And again, once you've determined how you want to sound, then you can take all of this content and you can essentially identify an actual human being that represents as much of that as you can possibly find. And sometimes it's pretty funny, sometimes it's different than you may have imagined. So here's some examples there. You've got Colonel Sanders, KFC. Matthew McConaughey is actually, he represents two companies, Wild Turkey Bourbon and Lincoln Navigator. The Gecko for Geico, so it doesn't have to be a human. Sometimes it's a character that's been created as part of that. But again, we use it, Creative Fuse, and we'll again touch on this, but Creative Fuse, our brand persona is Ellen DeGeneres. And what we try to do is feel out any time that we're engaging on a content level, any time that we're talking to folks, not necessarily on like a customer service level or where there's a very serious engagement, but more when there's, emails that are going out and maybe reviews that have been submitted, things like that. We're trying to engage with them in a way that has a little bit of that quippiness that she has, and just, it's good humor, it's lighthearted, it's in a way that, everybody can pretty much resonate with. So on the flip side of this, there's a brand persona, but then there's also a buyer persona. This is also known as a customer persona, or the buyer persona. Again, this is the humanizing your ideal customer. So you've done this with your brand. So at this point, you need to understand exactly who your customer is, and then you're going to create a fictitious human of your customer. Like if you could say, this would be my absolute ideal customer. These are all the characteristics they would have. This is exactly what their job is, all the demographics that you can imagine. Document all that, and then that'll help you with all of your marketing and your content that you'll be creating. So here's the steps in creating that. Give them a name. Again, you can have some fun with this, but we've got some we've done: Wood-Fired William, PhD Patrick, which was the Sivert Project, Motivated Molly, Freelance Fiona, so on and so forth. So it kind of gives you a little descriptor and then a little content on the name themselves. So define their background. You can use channels like LinkedIn, Facebook, pretty much any social channel. You can you can dive into basic Google searches, obviously, but the more you understand about the individuals, because Facebook will give you a lot of that data as it is. So will LinkedIn. You can learn about their profiles. I mean, their jobs, their job history, their income levels, everything that you can imagine is all there. So some aspects you want to dive into: number of dependents, major, college, university, current job position, current city they reside in, things like that. The demographics, psychographics, and geographics. The more you know, the better. We've got gender, race, age, income, location, religion, political party, first language, home ownership. The list goes on. I mean, you really just understand and dive into as much as you can possibly find. Again, the library is another great resource for this. You can do that on a grander scale, but you can also do it with the social channels as well. So, excuse me. Identifiers. So these are qualities that describe their overall demeanor and unique interests. Focus on things like communication style, preference, social interests. This is where you're getting a little more personal with folks. So we did an example here on the rest of these for a bike share company focusing in an urban environment. So the examples here you'll see throughout are all for this bike share as a hypothetical situation. So they enjoy walking to downtown library when the weather's nice, would love to see kids, grandkids more often, has been in a job only 8 months, and doesn't own a car. So those might be identifiers for somebody that you would engage with if you owned a bike share that was looking to resonate downtown. So some goals here. These are the goals and ambitions relating to the area you need a product to address directly. These, again, for the bike share, if you want to find a reliable source of transportation for the following. So these would be their those goals that those folks have. They want to make sure their job isn't at risk so they can get around without relying on friends, so they can attend activities in the downtown area, looking for living transportation subsidies until they get on their feet again. So again, all hypothetical, but you get the hint of what the purpose of the goals are there. And then challenges on the flip side of that. What are some actual challenges that your customers may have? For the bike share, has been walking and riding coworkers to work, is considered getting a bike but has nowhere to store it at home. Buses don't run after 11 p.m., so RTA isn't an option for third shift commuting. So on and so forth. These are, again, those pain points and frustrations that they have that you really want to just understand thoroughly so that you can try to either cater to them or make sure that you're not going up and presenting more pain points for them as part of your brand. And then create some responses to all of those aspects that you just discovered there. So some of those goals, the challenges and objections, go through and talk about what exactly you would do with all that. Create some actual responses of how you would go through and do that. Now we will list out as part of the case studies some of these examples of these so you can get a sense of that. Then primary channels, this is where you're really understanding your market. It can be extremely extensive depending on what you're trying to accomplish and what your industry is. And obviously it can be very competitive as well. But social media, email, any of those aspects, you just really want to pay attention to where your customers are and make sure that you're hitting them where they are and understanding or diving into those. And also, if your competition is on those channels as well, you want to make sure, pay attention to exactly what they're doing on those channels. The keyword aspect we touched on earlier, this is where you might take it to the next level. Make sure that you can use some of these tools here. SEMrush in particular is a paid service, but the other two are free. You can start with what you know, start with what you think people are searching for, dive into any and all of those, and just kind of let yourself run wild with a little bit of that. You'll find that you can understand. There's long tail. There's all types of aspects to SEO, but just focus on the keyword aspect, and it'll help you from a content perspective. So case studies. So this is where I'll go through each of the areas that we went through and show you real world examples of how we applied to all of this information. So SyberTab. So they asked us to go through and rebrand their entire program. They didn't like the name SyberTab. They wanted to go through and get something entirely new that would engage the customer base much better. This was a little different because it didn't have a lot of competition because it's kind of an accelerator program that's meant for someone within the Cyber aspect or the Cyber world, which is fairly confined to some degree, but it was very fun to do. So who are we branding for? So this was the analysis. Obviously, we did a whole lot of research, but we boiled it down to a few key factors here. Who's the target audience? I'm not going to read all of these things, but you can see we clearly determined that for them. What unique value do they offer? And then why should they believe us? So these were a couple validation points that we came up with that we could use within our content. So then the participant persona, which essentially is kind of their customer. Instead of the buyer persona, they had more participants. So who are they serving? We had PhD Patrick. This was all kinds of info on his background, his demographics, identifiers of who he is, shows signs of viability, potential cyber research efforts, engages in mentorship and growth opportunities, values one-on-one training, all the things that they were hearing their customers ask as part of the other accelerators. We wanted to document and throw those in here. And then some goals, challenges, and objections that the customer base had as well. So real quotes. I didn't mention this earlier, but this is kind of fun. If you have, it doesn't apply obviously if you have a brand new product and you're not sure, unless you might find some quotes out on some social channels and things, but if you can dig up some actual testimonials and customer quotes that are very applicable to what you're trying to accomplish, these are really good reminders throughout the process of generating new content. And again, thinking about PhD Patrick here or your ideal customer, in a real sense. Like these are things he might actually say to you or within the industry. So then the brand position, what do we represent? So this piece, we created the positioning statement here, again, for internal use only, but I'll read it out loud just so you have a sense of kind of how simple it really needs to be. We demystify the commercialization journey for innovators who want to take the Air Force SBIR technology to market. Our program's in-person, hands-on approach to training allows for an individualized experience that produces results. It's very clear. It gives them an actual sense of what the program is meant to do. Again, customers aren't going to read this, but everyone involved at the level of SBIRTAP who works for the organization can read that and say, this is it. This is exactly why we exist. So their essence, hands-on personalized training, and then we went through brand personality, brand qualities. Will Smith was our brand persona, which was a lot of fun. So the other aspect of creating a brand persona is you kind of are encouraged to go watch a few movies and some videos and things. So it's, you get to have a little fun while you're doing it too. But why we recommended Will, again, with regards to SBIRTAP, he's well respected. His roles are often inspiring. Off camera, he operates with values the target audience can easily identify with, and he has a personality that embodies the commitment and experience of your brand. So we really felt like Will just thoroughly embodied exactly the perception that they wanted their customer base to have, their participants to have. All the voice aspect, the tone, and you guys will have a copy of this presentation, so you can read through all of it as you need to. But you'll find, as far as a personality map goes, most brands want to be dominant, they want to be friendly, they want to be forward with who they are as a company. It's rare that you'll see somebody who's unfriendly and submissive, but you never know. It depends on the industry, I guess, and how disarming you want to be with your approach to customers. So occasionally in an early stage with this one, because we were moving through and doing some actual branding for them as well, like the logo design and a lot of collateral and some other pieces, we went through and created a vision board. So this is an early stage piece that gives you a sense of the feeling that you're trying to invoke. It's that emotional connection I talked about. The goal with this is, it's not to say these are the images we want to use, these are the exact colors you want, but when you look at this vision board, it's just a sense of, okay, I like what I see here, I like the images that I'm finding, I like the colors, I like the general pace of the imagery that's there, and then you can dive in and see the sophisticated, energetic, organized, professional, empowering. So those elements are all the emotions and the nature of what we're trying to invoke with this vision board. The brand name itself. So in this case, again, we got to literally come up with a new name. So we threw, I don't even remember how many names, maybe 10 or so in the beginning, narrowed it down, and ultimately they landed, well, the buzzwords that we went through led us to some of those. We had some words we created new words, like out of nothing, some words we used that we felt resonated, and ultimately landed on Kinematic as the new brand name. So Kinematic had two words, so kina relating to kinetic and motion, and then matic meaning willing. So those two elements, we felt like everyone within this program they were finding themselves wanting to move forward. They literally, it's an accelerator program, so they needed to dive into the next phase of what they were trying to accomplish. So you can see where the resonance came from there at the end of this. All right, so second one, create a fuse. It's an obvious, easy one here. This piece, though, I'm not going to dive into the logo aspect because we're still working those, and this is a work in progress. But I can at least share some of our persona information and sort of why we resonate with it as a company. We just hit our 10-year mark, so we are going to change our current logo, which is, it's a little fond of it, but it's time. Who are we branding for? So who's our target audience? So So we go through and dive into all this. Again, I don't want to read through all this. I don't want to bore all of you guys, but there's a lot of great content as far as understanding and seeing the differences between something that's much more corporate like Cibertap and then going through and looking at a creative agency and seeing how we approach that as a whole different context. So the client persona, Enterprise Eddie. For us, we wanted to really tackle, our ideal client, we have clients all over the board, but our ideal client is somebody who's, a marketing manager or a, CMO or something like that who dives in and has, ambitious marketing budgets for the year and talks through some of the, really understands marketing so that we can dive in with them quickly and help them take wherever they're trying to go to the next level. So maybe it's a new audience, maybe it's a whole new brand in general, or maybe it's just revitalizing and helping get over a hurdle. If they're stuck at a 10-year profit level and they want to grow, then this is our ideal customer. So goals, challenges, what can we do? Again, we don't want to go through all this, but some keywords we're targeting: primary channels, objections, real quotes, and these are actual quotes that people have told us. How's your brand position? Our purpose is to inspire the extraordinary together, and our niche is digital branding. It's pretty straightforward. We kept this positioning statement very short, and we actually use our purpose is to inspire the extraordinary together. It's just inspire the extraordinary together as our outward tagline as well, because we resonate with it so much internally that it allows us to exude that when we approach projects. Our brand essence, caring, creative solutions, and then we have lots of personality and brand qualities there. Our persona is Ellen DeGeneres, because she's a lot of fun and awesome, like we hope that we are as well. So she provides lighthearted reflection with a cause. She makes you laugh and makes you think. She's the all shucks demeanor, and she's about highlighting others rather than herself. So if you've worked with us, you know that those are a lot of things that we value as well. There's a lot of slides here on Ellen, but I don't want to go through, but I wanted to include them here so that you all could, again, get a contrasting point of what it is for the creative versus corporate. So the personality map, roles and involvement, some of the voice and tone aspects. And we broke out our tone examples here based on some of the challenges that we've had from creating content. So we've got, when an inquiry isn't a good fit, how do you approach that? Maybe you've got a customer coming to you that says they really want to work with you, but they're just not necessarily a good fit for your company. You don't want to just say no. You want to, talk to them about it, maybe offer up a solution, but how would we word that to them? So we went through and actually figured out how we would communicate these things. When a client refuses to communicate, for example, when someone gives us a 1-star review with a complaint, how do you approach that? When someone publicly compliments our work, form submissions, so on and so forth, 404 errors. So again, we went through, we revised our core values. We talked about exactly who we are as a company. We grow together, we work smart, we care for one another, and we are intentional. Not rocket science, but we all understand them extremely well within the organization. And then how we do it. So design principles are specific to what we do, obviously, but you can go through your how aspect and talk about it exactly, both from a, well, let me read through this here. So design clarity, for instance, demonstrate cohesion and intentional craftsmanship to deliver beautiful, fully transparent experiences. Be people-centric and meet the needs of each individual interacting with our designs. No user left behind. So you can feel the intent behind that. It's not telling you exactly how or what that we're doing, but it gives you a sense of the design clarity that we want to have in every aspect that we push out. So the others follow along the same suit. There's, experiential focus, fearless failure, that's a big one for us, holistically accessible, and then purposefully lean. So those 5 there's no quantity that you're shooting for when it comes to how you do it or what you do. You just need to help yourself define what those look like so that you can communicate them effectively with your clients. So the design and application piece. Again, I'm not going to dive too much into this because it's a very extensive process. I will say take it seriously. It's something that, again, a logo in particular many times is that first impression that you're going to have with folks, and you want to make sure it's right. You don't want to, hire your nephew, then pay them $35, and now you have a logo. Well, that doesn't always work, trust me. Yes? What's that? Okay, there's 2 slides, yep. Types of logos. So there's really 7 ones. Abstract mark, mascot, pretty straightforward. Combination mark usually involves a letter mark and a symbol. The emblem, which is typically a Starbucks, and there's a lot of government organizations that use emblems as well. Letter marks are strictly letters. Pictorial mark is just a symbol. It's also known as a symbol. And then a word mark, which has lettering but usually has some kind of graphic element to it as well. So then in a logo design, this is our basic process: concepts and thumbnail sketches, rough digital comps, define the color palette and typography, and then obviously the design variations and then the guidelines. Just to show you a few, again, we go through quite a process when we dive into this stuff. And then for kinematic, we ended up with that guy there. So sometimes we'll apply it to business cards or things just to give them a sense of what it might look like. So applying your brand, this is going to be entirely contingent on your industry and your market, but you need to make sure that it's consistent in whatever you're doing. Any content that you're pushing out, make sure that people can feel you as a company within that content. Don't go just push something out because you need it out for a trade show or something. Make sure it's intentional when you're pushing it out. So that's your website, social, video, email, trade shows, any kind of messaging that you're pushing out. It should all be consistent. So last slide here, really. This brand development piece here, we created this guide because we had a lot of folks asking us how to approach a branding project. So a lot of what I talked about in this is within this guide, and it's all free. You can go click and download this. It walks you through the entire process. There's tons of worksheets and things within it. There's several more examples of different messaging even and pieces and parts of the entire process. So feel free to go download that. Use it for yourself. Obviously, we're more than happy to help walk you guys through any aspect of that as well if you're interested. But same with the website side of things. It's a place to get started. It kind of walks you through some of the early stage things. And then there's some basic resource links there that were mentioned throughout the guide so that you can dive in. I think that is all. All right. Thank you. So, questions? Sorry, this link here, if you want to write this down, will give you this presentation, so you can go download it right now. Yeah. Wait, what? All right. bit.ly/2 capital Z 0 lowercase j capital Z 4 capital C.